All right, let's jump right into it. Today, we're tearing down the anatomy of an absolute mega hit. We're doing a full explainer on Miley Cyrus's Flowers. We're going to look at the staggering numbers, peel back the layers of its musical DNA, and of course, dig into that massive cultural and legal controversy echoing around it right now. Whether you're a pop fanatic, a copyright law nerd, or just someone who literally could not escape this song on the radio, there's a fascinating story here about how modern hits are built, perceived, and, well, defended. You already know the words. Honestly, you've probably belted them out in your car at least once. When this track dropped as the lead single for Endless Summer Vacation, it instantly hooked listeners all over the globe. But why? Well, at its core, it just strikes this massive nerve with its theme of unapologetic self-reliance. It's this spunky, self-love anthem about stepping into your own autonomy. Realizing you don't need to depend on anyone else to feel complete. It completely ditches the typical melancholy of a breakup track for this fiercely assertive outlook. And man, that message translated into commercial success on a scale we rarely ever see. Okay, let's dive into this because this number is simply jaw-dropping. 2.7 billion. Yep, with a B. That represents the global subscription stream equivalents the song racked up in 2023 alone, at least according to the International Federation of the Phonographic Industry. That staggering figure made Flowers the undisputed best-selling global single of the year. It completely dominated the charts, bringing Miley her first-ever appearance on an IFPI annual global top 10 chart. It wasn't just a hit. It was a full-blown global monoculture moment. To truly grasp the sheer scale of this thing, we've got to look at the sprint it made on streaming platforms. When it dropped in January 2023, it absolutely shattered Spotify records right out of the gate. In just its first full 7 days, it pulled in over 96 million plays globally. At the time, that was literally the biggest week for a song in the platform's history. And unlike most hits that kind of spike on day one and then slowly fade out, Flowers actually grew in popularity day after day. It became the fastest song in Spotify history to cross 1 billion streams. It did that in just 112 days. And then it went on to become the fastest female song to surpass 2 billion streams in 502 days. Just totally unprecedented momentum. But hey, it wasn't just streaming. The radio dominance was practically unheard of across the Billboard charts. It hung out for 8 non-consecutive weeks at #1 on the Hot 100. But the real story? That's its longevity on the radio airplay charts. Get this. 17 weeks atop adult pop airplay, and a mind-boggling 57 weeks at the top of the adult contemporary chart. 57 weeks! That is over a full year, making it the longest-running #1 song in the entire 60-plus year history of the adult contemporary chart. It literally achieved the most cumulative weeks at #1 across all Billboard airplay charts, ever. So all of this commercial dominance ultimately culminated in Cyrus's ultimate critical victory. Over a year after the song first dropped, she took the stage at the 66th Annual Grammy Awards. And that night, Flowers took home Record of the Year and Best Pop Solo Performance. Astonishingly, these were the very first Grammy wins of Miley's entire career. Crazy, right? And her performance that night was so captivating that it actually catapulted the song right back into the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100, well over a year after it first debuted. So you've got to wonder, how exactly do you build a song that wins Record of the Year and breaks literally every global streaming record? Let's peel back its musical DNA. The track was actually written back in January 2022 at Sunset Sound Recorders in Hollywood by Cyrus, Gregory Alday Hine, and Michael Pollack. And according to Pollack, as they were all gathered around a Rhodes piano, the initial demo was really just a stripped-back, slower, much sadder ballad. He noted that the melody and the chord progression kind of formed simultaneously, relying on the classic circle of fifths. Now, if you know music theory, that's a very common, naturally pleasing sequence of chords, which basically made the writing process feel incredibly natural. Of course, producers Kid Harpoon and Tyler Johnson definitely didn't leave it as a sad piano ballad. They evolved it into this massive genre-blending, up-tempo anthem we all know today. Critics really praised its shimmering electric guitar and that sort of understated yacht rock mood. I mean, fundamentally, it's a pop song, but it's heavily injected with these classic disco and funk influences. You've got this funky, guiding bass line really anchoring the track, paired up with pop rock fizzy cymbals and this totally swooning string section that Pitchfork even described as reminiscent of flamenco. It is honestly a masterclass in blending retro instrumentation with pristine modern pop vocal delivery. But as we all know, with massive world-dominating success comes immense scrutiny. Almost immediately upon release, a huge cultural and now legal controversy started swirling around the song. Listeners all over the internet started asking the exact same question. Did Flowers actually copy the 2012 Bruno Mars hit When I Was Your Man? The whole rumor mill really kicked off with the lyrics. Fans instantly noticed these stark lyrical parallels between the two choruses. In the Bruno Mars track, the narrator is expressing deep regret over not buying his partner flowers, not holding her hand, not taking her to parties. Meanwhile, in Flowers, Miley is celebrating buying her own flowers, holding her own hand, and taking herself dancing. And since Flowers dropped right on Cyrus's ex-husband's birthday, fans originally framed this as just a brilliant, intentional response track. You know, a musical conversation flipping the perspective of a song her ex allegedly once dedicated to her. For a while, this was really just fun internet pop culture lore. But then, in September 2024, it became a federal legal matter. A company called Tempo Music Investments officially filed a copyright infringement lawsuit in Los Angeles, claiming that Flowers includes unauthorized exploitation of that 2012 track. Now, I want to make something super clear here. Bruno Mars himself is not actually named as a plaintiff in this lawsuit. Instead, Tempo Music claims it owns a portion of When I Was Your Man, a portion they purchased from one of the song's co-writers, Philip Lawrence, and they are the ones pursuing this legal action against Cyrus and her co-writers. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is what happens when we strip away all that internet drama and just look at the objective music theory. A really fascinating picture emerges. There's a highly detailed analysis from the Reddit music community that breaks down why these might actually be completely different songs musically. First off, let's look at the tempo. Flowers is this upbeat, disco-infused track, cruising at 118 beats per minute. When I Was Your Man, on the flip side, is a traditional, slow piano ballad sitting way down at 73 beats per minute. The foundational energy of these two tracks is entirely distinct, which, if you think about it, makes the idea of comparing a melancholy piano ballad to an energetic disco anthem in federal court just a tiny bit absurd. Then we've got the chord progressions. Yes, both songs operate in the key of C, which naturally gives them a somewhat similar emotional vibe. And yet, both songs do start their verses with an A minor chord. But watch where they go next. Flowers moves from an A minor 7 to a C, to a G, and then a C minor 7. The Bruno Mars track moves from an A minor to a C, to a D minor, and then a G. So, do they share some harmonic DNA? Absolutely. But they resolve and cycle through their progressions in very different ways. And I love how Reddit user BadJobDad pointed this out in their music theory defense of the track. They said, besides starting with an A minor chord, there's really not much else that lines up. So many sad songs start with AM, probably tens of thousands, so that alone doesn't say much. I think that perfectly captures the defense side of this whole debate. Just because two songs happen to share a common starting chord in literally the most common key in pop music doesn't inherently equate to structural theft. And this brilliantly illustrates our final point of musical comparison, the melody and the rhythm. When you actually get down to it and look at the sheet music, the melodies are vastly different. Flowers relies on very simple quarter note beats for almost every single bar in the verse. It uses a relatively contained vocal range to deliver that cool, unbothered, confident attitude. But the Bruno Mars vocal melody, it is highly rhythmic, vastly more complex, and makes extensive use of these big, sweeping vocal ranges. You can mash the two songs up together on TikTok all day long, sure, but structurally, they really just don't map one-to-one. Which brings us right back to this current legal standoff. We are basically watching a massive, real-time test of modern copyright law unfold. Tempo Music is holding firm on their claim of unauthorized exploitation. Now, in November 2024, Cyrus's legal team actually filed a motion to dismiss the lawsuit. They argued that Tempo Music didn't have standing to sue without the other co-writers involved. But the court denied that dismissal, basically stating that Tempo Music, as a transferee of rights, legally steps right into the co-writer's shoes and absolutely has the right to sue. So as of right now, the final ruling on whether actual copyright infringement took place remains completely pending. So what does this all mean? What should you actually take away from this explainer? Well, Flowers is an undeniable juggernaut. It redefined Miley Cyrus's career and set completely new benchmarks for global streaming and radio success. But its ultimate legacy, that might just be tied up in a courtroom. It leaves us with a really provocative question, one the music industry is constantly wrestling with. Where exactly do we draw the line? Is Flowers a case of actionable copyright infringement that illegally exploited a previous work? Or is it simply a brilliant, inspired musical conversation between two massive pop hits? It's quite literally a multi-million-dollar question, and the whole world's waiting for the answer. Thanks for joining me on this one, and definitely keep your ears open.